Resellers, you have landed on episode number 134 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is October 11th, 2023, and my guest today is Chuck in Virginia. I just have one announcement. I wanted to update you on a personal situation that may take me away from my eBay business and possibly content creation. I know many of you watch my eBay store, so I just wanted you to know the situation and not think I have suddenly become lazy or don't care about my eBay business anymore, because we all know life happens. So, my younger sister, who I have talked about many times on this podcast when reminiscing about our childhood, lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, about 2 hours from me in Greenville. Her husband, my brother-in-law, for 30 years, has been suffering from early onset dementia for a few years. He is only 58. His health has been rapidly declining for the past few months, and we don't know how much time he has left. And let me add that I didn't know anything about this disease. I thought dementia was just forgetting things, possibly wandering off, not knowing familiar people anymore, or being confused, like in the movie The Notebook. Boy, Hollywood got that one wrong. I have learned that dementia is a degenerative disease that breaks down the brain and then the body, along the lines of Parkinson's. Healthcare experts say the later stages of dementia is human development in reverse, and that is absolutely true. So I have been traveling to Charlotte to help my sister. We don't have any family there, and unfortunately her husband's family are all deceased. This is a tough, emotional, physically and mentally draining situation for my sister as his primary caregiver. He's still at home and we're trying to keep him there. So I'm going to be there to support her. We always knew we might have to face something like this with our parents, but never dreamed it would happen to loved ones in our generation. And my sister will be a widow soon. She's only in her early 50s. So she will need my support and full attention probably forever. I've always looked after her. She's 4 years younger than me, and that won't change. She just needs more right now. And I'm so grateful that I have set up my business and my life so most things are on autopilot and I can drop everything at a moment's notice to help her. Or I can bring some work along when traveling. Our other siblings have regular full-time jobs and their lives are not as flexible. So, I would like to ask you, my loyal audience, for two things. First, some latitude on being your fearless leader, because I am not as fearless as I appear. I am a regular person, just like you. I may not list or sell as many items in my eBay store as usual, because that has been put on the back burner for now. I don't expect this podcast will suffer because I always work ahead on future episodes and I really enjoy making these. So we are probably okay there. I know a lot of you refer to me as your Wednesday friend because my podcasts drop on Wednesdays. So that shouldn't change. The second thing I would like to ask for is prayer for my sister Trina and her husband Jeff. You can never have too much prayer, and they need all they can get. And I'm a firm believer that prayer works. I also mentioned this on my sales update video on YouTube this week and showed some photos of Trina and Jeff during their happy times before his illness. So if you want to put faces with names, you can check out my sales update video from the week of October 9th, 2023. Thank you all for your support during this very difficult time. Okay, now let's meet Chuck.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode. And I have a sort of newer seller, Chuck, and I asked him to come on the podcast because he had a fascinating story about an item he sold. And then it got deleted from the thread. And so we're going to revisit that some point during the podcast. So how are you doing this morning, Chuck?
I'm doing great, Suzanne. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
And tell the listeners where you're located.
I live in Northern Virginia and lived here for about almost 15 years now.
Okay, great. And unfortunately, the listeners can't see your beautiful front porch and the deep green trees behind you and the American flag waving. I mean, this looks like it was staged for a magazine cover. So I get to enjoy looking at your background.
Well, it's 70 degrees here today. It is just a beautiful fall day. I mean, it's just couldn't be better.
Yes, it's finally cooled off here too. So very happy about that. So let's dive into your story. You're a newer seller. What brought you to eBay and when?
Okay, so I was looking back. I joined eBay, I guess, many years ago. My account says 2011, but I really feel like it was sooner than that. Maybe I did something to interrupt it, but I started an account way back when and bought a few things, but mostly the only thing that I sold over the years until this past February was if I upgraded or someone in my family upgraded their iPhone, I would sell their old iPhone on eBay for them and, pick up a few $100s. And that was pretty much all that I did till February of this year when I really started to ramp it up a little bit.
What made you change your mind? Did you find something around the house to sell, or did you have a big sale, or what was the catalyst that pushed you into eBay?
All right. So, well, again, your viewers can't see me, but you can see how old I am. I just turned 68, so I'm getting to that point where I'm about to get ready to retire.
You're distinguished. You're not old.
Anyway, I don't know when I'm going to retire. The truth is, because I do like what I do and I'm still pretty fit. But at the same time, I know the day is going to come where I've got to make the decision. I mean, I don't want to be one of those guys that dies at his desk. And there are people where I work who have done that.
Oh no.
Yeah, there are. There's some guys who just will never leave the department. And so, but I don't want to be that guy anyway. So in preparation for that, we've got this pretty good sized house here in Northern Virginia. My wife and I are both from the Tidewater area, Norfolk, Virginia Beach area. And we just bought a co-op down there about a year and a half ago where we're going back down to see family. We're just downsizing. So I started to say, you know what? I've seen all these things on eBay, and I'm sorry about the dogs in the background barking. But maybe I can sell some of this stuff. So I just started, I said, to my wife, Margie, I said, just give me what you got. What do you want to sell? And I just started researching it. And I was really kind of just fumbling and stumbling along early on.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got on YouTube, started listening to people who've done it. And I'm not sure how long into it was that I discovered you. you are by far the best out there. There are some good. I'm not taking anything away from them, Suzanne, and I'm not just trying to blow smoke, but you're so organized in the way you describe things, and plus you've been doing it so long. You've made many of the mistakes that I'm sure that all of us have made as we've started out.
Oh, yes.
So you learn from your mistakes, and I've been learning from my mistakes in fast fashion here in the last 7 months. But that's sort of the impetus, was just to get rid of things that we just literally knew at some point we were going to just, why do we still have this stuff? That's what I did, and started selling things. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious, and it's kind of fun.
Do you want to share what your real life job is?
Sure. Without going into a lot of details, I work for the Department of Justice, and I've basically been a career prosecutor in a couple of different formats. I was a state prosecutor, then I was a federal prosecutor in court. Now I am more in a policy position with the Department of Justice and review things that other federal prosecutors have to get permission to do, to make recommendations to the uppity up guys in the department who have to make decisions. And that's about all I can say about it.
Okay. Where did you go to law school?
I went to law school at Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, which is right down the road from where you were raised or born.
Right, because we discussed I was born in Charlottesville, and so I have Virginia on my birth certificate. That's my connection.
Yeah.
So, but I love talking to sellers from all walks of life, because it's such a diverse mix of people. And I'm very flattered when highly educated people in high level careers find me and give me that feedback, because I do try to structure everything as a learning situation. Now, you talked about folks on YouTube, and everybody has their own style. I was just never the one to do the ride along and, let's go to Dunkin' Donuts and get coffee, and then we're going to go to Goodwill. And that just isn't me. I just wasn't comfortable doing that. And I do watch some of those videos and watch people shop and all that kind of thing. But that became the status quo on YouTube. Everybody started doing that. And I was just like, I've structured it the way I like to learn. And I followed a couple of people on YouTube in the early days that they're not there anymore, but I loved their style of like, one was called Mad Maine, and it was this lady up in Maine. And I think she was from Norway, maybe, but she did a lot of glass. She taught a lot about glass and odd items like that weren't not the kind of stuff you see all the time. So I really liked her and her style of explaining what this thing is. And then there was another one called Cherry Vintage, and she kind of did the same thing. She'd take a vintage item and talk about it and why it's valuable, and explain some of the key words to use. And those were the kind of people I followed that I liked. So that's, I guess, what you do in life is you find somebody you like, and then you model your work after them. You pick and choose what you like from different people. So that's kind of where I got to the whole the way I do it. And also in my corporate life, I did presentations. So it's like, they don't need to see me on camera. They need to see the kind of stuff to look for that sells, And so that's how I got to where I am. But thank you for your feedback.
Well, no, but it's very effective too. I mean, it's because like you were saying, I've found a lot of different YouTube videos, and some of them were interesting for a little while, but then I start to ask myself, because as I learn about things, I'm starting to form my own opinions about how I want to get things done. And while I think it's fun and I love to do it, I also know that it's time consuming. So my time becomes valuable, especially since I'm still working. So I'm doing this kind of messing around at night after work. And I mean, I'm taking some time here today to talk to you, but my work will be waiting for me when I get done with you and on weekends and stuff. But so I don't have time to just watch random videos that don't teach me anything. Yours, on the other hand, are all content oriented, and there's just I'm blown away by how organized you have been and what you've done and how valuable it is to people. Anybody that doesn't see your stuff is missing it if they want to actually do what we're doing.
Well, and a lot of the content out there is entertainment. That's their style, is just entertainment. And as a creator, you're really competing for people's time, especially on YouTube when they're watching it. So podcasts are different because they're portable. You can listen to them anytime you want. When I have insomnia at night, 3:00 in the morning, I'm like, oh, let me listen to something.
Oh my God, you just sound like me, because when I go to bed every night, I'll put a little podcast that I think is one that I'll be willing to, if I wake up at 3 or 4 and I need to just kind of get myself back to sleep, and I'll just have it ready on my phone and my earbud, and I'll pop it in and I'll just start listening to it, and then 30 minutes later I'm asleep again.
Yeah, because
not yours. I want to be wide awake for yours.
The sleep experts say, don't do anything with technology. Don't look at a screen. Get up and do something boring.
What do they know?
Organize your boxes or whatever. I did that the other night when I couldn't sleep. I was like, the whole world is asleep except me. I'm looking out the window. I don't see any lights on. So
don't worry about what the experts say, Suzanne. I'm going to live to a point, whatever it is. I don't know if it's predetermined or not, but while I'm alive, I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it.
Right. So anyway, back to the podcast. Yeah, they're
we're
portable, and I get all kinds of emails like, oh, I listen to you while I'm working out or driving or whatever. So I love that they're portable like that. But really, as a creator, you are competing for people's time. So you don't want it to be crappy.
Right. Well, but you found yourself a cool niche here, because you talk to other people who do what we all do. And to a person, I haven't heard anybody you've talked to that I walked away from listening to the podcast saying, well, that was a waste of my time. I found all of them interesting. They've all got a different way of looking at the world and looking at this thing that we do. And I learned something. I learned something from every single one of your podcasts.
Well, thank you. And it is the highlight of my week to do these Zoom calls and meet other sellers, because we're scattered everywhere. And sometimes it's hard to find local people that do this and understand and get it. So
it does seem like are most of the sellers from the United States? It seems like we are.
I know some in Australia, and I look at my stats on both YouTube and the podcast, and I've got audience in Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, pretty much everywhere except Africa.
Interesting.
So it is fascinating. Be like, wow, there's people over in the United Kingdom listening to this. So
that's wild.
It's fun. But so back to the eBay part. Do you want to start off with your surfboard rack story?
Okay, well, so that's, it's funny. People have joked with my wife and I, we've never lived in a house more than 5 years until this one, because my dad was a contractor. So I grew up doing construction work, and I've always been handy. Like this porch you're looking at, I did a lot of the work out here.
It looks like it should be on either Driving Miss Daisy or Fried Green Tomatoes. One of those movies. It is the southern front porch.
Yeah. And so I would always buy houses, fix them up, turn around and make a profit. And that was sort of how I did little extra things while I was working as a prosecutor, because as a prosecutor, as that kind of a lawyer doesn't get rich. We don't have clients like that. We're working on a salary. So we were always kind of doing that kind of thing, and then moving all the time. So these racks that were the part of the sale, I've literally probably moved these things from house to house to house almost a dozen times. And I've kept them all these years, from when I was 16, when I bought them and put them on my Volkswagen van, until now. But now I'm trying to downsize. And I was like, you know what? And I saw that somebody had sold a pair. I said, wow, these are valuable. I don't remember what I paid for them, but back in when I was 16, I guarantee you I didn't pay what I sold them for recently. And so I finally said, all right, so I took them out, cleaned them up, found a box I could ship them in, put them in the box, got it all ready, organized to go. And then I put it on this 7-day auction to sell these surfboard racks. And as I mentioned in the Facebook page, about 4 days in, some guy writes me. He goes, "Hey, would you be willing to do a buy it now price? I've got a vintage show." He said, "I know what vintage is, but that's a wide variety of what can be vintage, you know."
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, I've seen these sell for anywhere between 250 and 300. So I set a buy it now of 275, and I wrote him and said, "All right, it's done." 2 minutes later, he bought them. And so then I decided I would tell him my story, because if he was going to a vintage show, I thought it might be interesting for him to know how vintage they were. So I
Mhm.
told him, I was 16 when I bought these. I just turned 68, and I had these on a Volkswagen van, grew up surfing in Virginia Beach, and all that information. Just told him about the background. Well, he writes me back. And that's when I thought the story got pretty cool. So I think it's a great story, an eBay story. And he says, "Well, I'm 67. I grew up in California, and I had a pair of these racks when I was 16 on a Volkswagen that I drove, and I surfed out in California all my life. And I've got this Volkswagen Bug that I've just restored, and I'm going to a vintage bug show in a couple of weeks, and I want to put these racks on there so I can carry my longboard up there." And I just thought, where else but eBay could two randomly situated guys the exact same age, living on opposite coasts of the United States, having the same mindset probably for most of our lives,
Mhm.
connect like this? It's just, you can't make it up.
No, no. Yeah, the stories are fascinating. So, yeah, I mean, you rehomed these surfboard racks, and you said you had a VW Bug.
I had a Volkswagen van. He had a Bug.
Oh, you had the bus.
I had the bus. I had this yellow and white bus, and I'm not an artist, but I had painted waves and surfing scenes all around on this bus. Probably diminished the value of the bus back at that time, but when you're a 16-year-old kid and all you think about is surfing, that's all you think about.
So, what year were you born?
55.
So, that would have been in like 71.
Yes.
Okay. Um, yeah, right in the middle of all the hippie stuff. And
It's funny. I'm not really, I don't know what I am.
you don't look like you ever would have been a hippie.
Here, how do I describe myself to people that don't know me? All right. I grew up surfing. I had an older brother who was, he almost had to go to Vietnam. I was just too young to go to Vietnam. So I
Mhm.
was in that generation, and I had those ideas in my brain, and I was kind of a hippie, but not really. I've always been a little odd and different in that way. I mean, for example, I mean, and I know that doesn't necessarily follow, but a lot of people I think that hippies are very liberal. I'm not liberal, but I'm
Mhm.
definitely more conservative than most people would imagine based upon my generational thought processes. I just look at the world from a different lens.
Well, I guess the stereotype of a surfer is just, Jeff Spicoli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, hothead surfer.
I'm not like that.
But it's like, it's just the laid back, like Jimmy Buffett lifestyle of,
Here you go. Jimmy
just
Buffett, all that. Yeah.
being laid back. So, here you are all these years later rehoming those surfboard racks to
Uh-huh.
somebody who was like your brother from another mother, I guess.
No, I just think it's a great story. And so it's probably going to be the one. I can't imagine that I'll ever have another eBay story that I love as much as that one, but maybe it'll happen. Who knows?
Well, so now we've got that out there. And what other kind of things have you sold that maybe were surprising or just fun?
So, it's funny listening to the people. I'm going to look at my book here because I've
Sure.
made some notes, but
Well, this is a podcast, so nobody knows what you're doing.
okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, I started out selling clothes that I wasn't going to wear and then my wife wasn't going to wear, which included things like old dress shirts. Because I mean, over the years as a lawyer, and the day was I wore a suit every day. I mean, I had to wear a suit every day. But then as time went on and spent less time in court, more policy stuff, had less reason to wear suits. And then the pandemic hit and that changed everything. So we almost never wear suits anymore. I've kept a couple aside that when somebody dies or gets married, I've got a suit to wear, but pretty much that's the only time I need to put one on anymore. So I'm starting to get rid of that stuff. And so I did a lot of that. And we had some household items that we sold, kitchen stuff, things like that. So nothing special or different that most other people are doing. But then as I started to get into this thing, I was listening to people about how they source stuff and going to the thrift stores and Goodwill and everything. I thought, oh my God, there's so much. The horizon is just endless. Of course, I don't have time yet to do that. I just don't have time. So I've stuck pretty much with what I've done inside the house. But I also discovered Northern Virginia is kind of a hotbed. And I think it's probably true everywhere, but people are giving stuff away left and right. Things like VCRs and weird stuff that you just, okay, why are you giving away the VCR? And then I'm seeing that people are selling these things. So I started following these sites and somebody would offer a VCR. I said, I'll take it. I ran into this one guy who was selling these oscilloscopes, which is this crazy electric energy testing thing that if you're someone who wants one, you want one, and they're not cheap. And he had a bunch of them that he didn't want. So I've taken them from him and I just sold one to some guy in Canada. I've got another one listed. I'm going to do them one at a time as they go along. And for me, I'm like, okay, somebody wants to buy these things. I get them for free. It's free money. Why would you walk away from free money? And so that's sort of where I've been getting a lot of other things that I've been selling. Is just like today, some guy gave away 2 box unused kits for venting dryers.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right. They sell for around $30 new. He gave them up new. I listed them for $25 each. And last night I heard the little ching ching. One of them sold. So I shipped one out today. I sold this morning, a guy made me an offer. Are you familiar with people selling empty whiskey bottles?
Empty liquor bottles in general can be quite lucrative. Yes.
So I had one. I know that people collect these tops. I listed it, sold one this morning. So I enjoy the whiskey. And then when I'm done, I sell the bottle.
How much did you get for it?
I let it go for $15.
Okay.
I have kind of come to this conclusion. If the investment is either I was going to buy the whiskey anyway, or I get it for free, I don't lose too much sleep over whether I'm getting what I think might be quote unquote top dollar.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take, if you want to make me an offer and it's going to put money in my bank account and I can move it to somebody who wants it, I'll let it go. I'm not that worried about it. And
right, because especially that you recognize there's an endless stream of stuff.
Yeah, there is.
And it's only going to continue as more baby boomers retire. Something like 10,000 baby boomers retire every day. And, retirement goes hand in hand with downsizing. And you have kids?
I have 3 boys, all adults.
Okay. And they probably don't want your stuff.
Kind of weird. They don't want any of my stuff.
That's common. Just it's that generation that just doesn't, you have the history with it. You have the emotional attachment, like to the surfboard racks.
Yeah.
And, I don't want any of my parents' stuff.
Uh-huh.
I don't want that Victorian looking couch that was my grandmother's that like my dad just thinks is wonderful. And I'm like, just donate it to a bed and breakfast or something, I don't want that. And, I'm on the more minimalist track, imagine that being a eBay seller with inventory and living minimally because
I think that's sort of the mindset some of us get into, especially those of us who are doing the downsizing thing, is you we've enjoyed these things, but at the same time, we also know life gets simpler as you downsize and get away from some of this stuff. You were some of the things I sold, silly things. So I'm a big sports fan. My boys played sports, and I'm a huge North Carolina Tar Heel basketball fan. I had a 1993 NCAA championship T-shirt that I bought. I probably paid back at that time. I bet I paid $15 for, maybe if that. I wore the heck out of this shirt, Suzanne, forever. I love this shirt. But then I finally reached a point where I just wasn't wearing it anymore. So I decided, let's put it on eBay and see what happens. I sold it a while back for $19.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's crazy. I sold a shirt that I wore the heck out of for more than I paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I go to a lot of Washington Nationals baseball games up here, and I've got a bunch of bobbleheads that I've given away at the games over the years. I've been selling those off left and right. That's been one of the big things I've sold. But they gave us a little jar of dirt one day from the field. A jar of dirt from the Washington Nationals Park field. I sold it for $3.
Okay, that might have to be
rid of that little jar of dirt. If I'd have put that at a yard sale, no one would have given me a penny for it. But I put it on eBay. Somebody gives me $3. It's crazy.
So what's to stop somebody from just making a bunch of jars of dirt and saying, "Oh, this came from wherever"?
I suppose that could happen. That's not what happened in this case, but it could happen.
That's got to be one of the most unusual things I've ever heard to be sold.
That's what I was looking for this morning, was what are some of the weird things?
Yeah.
All right, here's something I sold that is sort of still my little bugaboo on my eBay. I've got currently 266 what do you call them?
Listings.
Feedback.
Oh, feedback. Okay.
All right. And you did a podcast I listened to a while back. I don't think it was recent. It's been a while, where you talked about how you can expect to get feedback on about a third of the things you sell. And then I went and I looked at my stuff that I'd sold, and I was like, damn, she's nailed it. It was about a third, of what I've sold, I've gotten feedback on. So, to the extent you're getting feedback, who knows what the other people are thinking. But of all of that feedback, one guy gave me a neutral feedback, but it read negatively.
Mm-hmm.
He said, this smells like it's been in a house full of smoke and it's all scratchy. Well, it's this thing called a Kruve coffee grind sifter, spelled Kruve, and it has different size screens. And if you're a person who does like grind your own coffee and you do pour over things, which is what I do most of the time, I'm into coffee. This thing will help you sort it all out so that you get the right size coffee ground for your coffee pour over.
Okay.
Well, I bought it and I used it, but then I finally realized, it was a lot of work and effort, and I kind of had my coffee grinder set where it worked. So I decided to sell this thing with all the stuff. Well, it's made out of an aluminum, and it's brushed aluminum, so it's not shiny, right? I listed it as excellent because it is excellent. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I learned a lesson here. He wrote me back, complained about the smoking, complained about the scratches. And I thought, he said, this is not in excellent condition. I tried to get eBay to make him get rid of it. They wouldn't do it because it wasn't negative, whatever. Well, it probably smelled smoky to him because it was coffee grounds in it. Coffee has a smoky smell to it, and it's brushed aluminum. So yeah, it was a little scratchy. But I learned my lesson. I don't describe anything as in excellent condition anymore.
Right.
Don't.
Yep. You got to be careful. That is very subjective. And yeah, some people will just, the highest I go is very good pre-owned condition.
So I've adopted your phrasing. I don't use very good. I use good pre-owned condition, but I borrowed that from you because I thought, okay, because it's sort of saying good condition. And don't forget, it's pre-owned, right? Don't forget, you're buying something that's been pre-owned.
Oh, yes. There's people that should not buy on eBay because they don't get it. But I've seen listings that just explain that point ad nauseum, like, this is a pre-owned item. It is not in perfect condition. Do not expect it to be brand new and all that kind of stuff. And most of the people buying pre-owned, they get it.
They do. Most
They
people
don't,
do.
right.
Yeah, they do. And
What
most people,
else?
as you've talked about, you'll get a few complainers and stuff like that. And, and I've had a couple of returns that I thought, that's kind of being jerky about it. But at the same time, I've listened to you and I've listened to other sellers who've been at this for a while. And I've kind of adopted the mindset, which is don't take it personal. You're selling stuff. You're not going to win every time. And if there's somebody wants to complain, then just try to be as nice as you can and say, thank you so much. I'm sorry that it didn't work out, and just initiate a return. And if it's not worth it to me, I'll say, keep it at some point. I don't usually give that to them right away, but at
Right.
some point I'll wait for the whole process to get to that point where I know that it's not worth it to me to take it back. And I'll say, keep it. Right.
And with used clothing, it's been washed, so maybe it did shrink. But that's one thing you have to keep in mind with clothing. I wouldn't say it's a high return item if you do it right on the front end and explain everything, but that's usually what is returned if I get it's clothing.
Yeah. I've sold a lot of things now. I didn't double check how many things I've sold since February because I've been at it pretty steadily. But I don't I can't think of more than maybe a handful of things that have been a return situation, to the point where, I mean, not only am I buying in on the other theory that other sellers and you preach, which is, it's not worth getting upset about, is that it's also not a very big deal because it just doesn't happen that often. And so I'm not
Mhm.
losing a lot of sleep over if somebody wants to return something every now and then. I haven't been hit with a big one yet, but I guess that day could come. So I've started to say out in the wild now. My wife is laughing at me and it's like, well, this is what the eBay people talk. It's out in the wild. If it's something that you've just sort of randomly finding, it's out in the wild. And I love that phrase because it is. It's kind of like it's just out there.
We're hunter gatherers. We're out in the wild instead of hunting and gathering berries.
I know.
Finding treasures to sell.
I know. It's just crazy. And so it's just, I was looking at my notes here just to see what else interesting that I've sold. I can't really say that I've sold anything that interesting. It's been a lot of different things, but I'm a big biker cyclist. And so I've been listing unused bike parts that I've just been hauling around for years. And I was like, you know what? Looking on eBay, there's people who buy these things. So I just, rather than carry them around with me, I've just listed them. I do a little research and put them on there. I have to mention, remember, you know the famous Clorox bleach pens that you BOLO'd, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm talking to my wife one day and said, you're not going to believe this, but there's these Clorox bleach pens that people will pay a lot of money for. And she goes, I've got 4 of them.
So you got those listed, right?
So I sold them. They're gone.
Yeah.
But about $25 each. Ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's not even the product that's inside, it's the applicator that people like, because you can dab it on, if you've got clothing or whatever that's a pattern and it's got white, you can just dab it where you need it. But yeah, that's what I look for in the estate sale pictures, like figuring out what estate sale to go to. Like, what kind of products do they have? Because there's another, like a floor wax thing that's not made anymore that people like. And there's all kind of products like that people just want the original. They don't want to find a new thing. The reason they were discontinued was during 2020, Clorox decided to focus on their top selling products. And with all of the sanitation required, the bleach and the bleach spray and that kind of thing. And the bleach pens did not make the cut. So they quit making them. They may come back one day. We don't know, but people still want them. Here we are 3 years later.
Yeah.
So everyone run to your laundry room and look for the Clorox bleach pen.
My wife she said, well, maybe I should keep one. I said, I've never seen you use one of these things. You had them all these years. You do spray and wash. I said, no, I'm selling these.
You have on your eBay glasses and everything is could be up for sale. What about that? What about that? What about this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you said, you say this all the time. You'll be in somebody else's house, or somebody will be talking about something, and you'll be thinking, I could sell that. I could sell that. And I'm all your stuff, the podcast and the people that talk about different things, you're talking about estate sales and things like that. Again, I just don't really have time for it right now because I'm fitting this in and I've got my other job. There's only so much things I can do. But when the day does come that I do retire, my brain is full of all kinds of information, and I'm going to be I'm going to be one of those estate sale guys, and I'm going to be going to thrift stores. I'm going to be looking around because it's not hard work. You've got to be diligent about it. But once you as I've gone along, I've gotten better and learned how to take my pictures better so that I don't have to go back and refix my photos anymore. Each month along, I get a little bit better at what I'm doing, to the point where I think I have my all fine tuning things, but it's also, it's just too easy to find these things that at either no cost or very minimal cost, and make money on it. And why wouldn't you want to be able to do that? I mean, it kind of lets you feel like if you go out to dinner or whatever, it ain't no big deal. You just
Right. And I love the young people that are getting into it, because reselling is something you can do for the rest of your life. And, say you fall on hard times, you lose your job, you have a special needs child, all the things that can happen where you need extra money. You can do this along with anything else or on its own. You can pick it up when you need it. And I love to see that it's empowering. You don't have to wait around to be hired. And, while you can work at Taco Bell for $18 an hour, that's not the most fun job. eBay is as much as you can put into it as time allows. And it's very empowering. And back to seeing things in the wild, going to people's houses. I was in a restaurant the other day, and sitting next to me is a guy with a Monster Energy hat and shirt on.
Okay.
And that's a high profit item, because do you know Monster Energy drinks?
I do, but why? I mean, I know you
Because they only sell their products at events, motocross and all those extreme sports, or they give them away at the events. You can't, that I'm aware of, go into a store and buy a Monster Energy logoed item. So there's all these things that were created for specific events, especially motocross, backpacks and coolers and all kinds of stuff. So here's this guy, and I almost said, "Hey, I'll give you $10 for that hat." And I kind of watched him. I was like, oh, I just had a hard time not saying anything. And then he walks out and gets into a Monster Energy truck. He was a delivery guy.
So he should have totally let you buy that hat from him, because he could get another one.
He may not know the value of the stuff because he's around it all day.
So did he sell it to you or not?
I didn't ask him.
Oh, you should have. Because see, he could go into the truck. He probably had another one waiting for him. He could have sold you that for $10, put it in his pocket, and you'd have had the hat. And
I was with a friend, and I didn't want to embarrass her, but it's just, and I'll see people with Masters hats, because I sell those all the time for $30 or higher. If it has a year on it, it will sell for more. And, I'll be in the grocery store and I will say, "Hey, I'll give you $10 for that hat." "Oh no, I was at the Masters in 2002. I'm keeping this hat, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, yeah, it'll be in Goodwill one day.
And you'll find it because you're there all the time. It's just amazing.
Yeah. And I love finding those stacks of hats. Like somebody cleaned out their closet and they're all brand new.
Yeah. So that's one of the things you sell a lot of, isn't it? I mean, I've heard you talk about hats. You like to sell hats.
I do. I've gotten into that this year. I didn't realize how lucrative it is. And it's just something, I've never had one returned. They're different, fun, and cool, and they can be distressed and, AKA dirty and beat up. And I'm learning that the ones that sell the best are very specific locations, like, a ranch in Colorado, or maybe somebody visited there and they didn't want to pay $50 for a hat. So they go on eBay and buy one for 25 or 30. Yeah, they don't take up much room. They're easy to ship, and they're all adjustable. So it doesn't matter what size your head is, it's going to fit.
I know, it's crazy. And you don't see me with a hat on now, but I almost put a cap on because I almost am never not wearing a baseball cap. I mean, my entire life, that's just something I've always done. And I'm a keeper. And I'm not me personally, I'm not a keeper, but I keep things like the surfboard racks. If I have something that I like, I will hold on to it. I will leave one hat and go to the next hat. The other hat will stay with me forever. And I've got a big supply of hats that I want to list and sell one day. So I've got a big supply I've got a lot of stuff to sell just because when I buy things, I keep things.
Well, and the holy grail is the mesh back trucker hats, like from the 80s, Smokey and the Bandit type stuff. Those can go for 300 or more. Yeah. And there's a whole subculture that loves those.
You were talking to somebody recently on a podcast. I'm not sure. It might have been a recent one. I get confused because I'm listening to your old ones and your new ones. But there was a woman named Lisa from Maryland, over on the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
Yeah, that was recently.
And you said something about selling ties, and she was talking about selling ties. Oh, it was the one where you found the vintage Vines tie from some high school.
It was Tabor, Tabor. It was a private school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, how did that end up down in South Carolina? Yeah.
I've got a couple from Washington and Lee Law School that are vintage Vines, but I'm not ready to sell those quite yet because those are special to me. But over the years as a lawyer, I have gotten a lot of ties, and I've still got these ties, but I'm not going to wear them all. I've plucked out the ones that I think are the best that I want to keep. And so I just listed my first tie yesterday.
Good.
Just went ahead and did one. But now, I mean, I'm going to be listing a bunch of these ties, and I don't know what I'm going to get for them. I know that some are more valuable than others, but I'm not going to be listing them at a very high price either because I don't care. I just want to move them. If I sell a tie for $5, I'll be a happy camper.
Well, you might want to lot them together by color or brand or something like that. Make it a little faster. But
that may be a good idea.
I haven't sold a large number of ties, but the ones I have sold for high dollar were unique. One that comes to mind was many years ago. It had sharks on it.
Something like that.
That's interesting. And so the guy bought it, and it was in the shipping address was something by a nature conservatory, maybe an aquarium within that or something. And it was like, okay. Or, a science teacher. I had one that had like the molecular structure of something on it was the pattern. And
something unusual and unique to someone.
Yeah. And so I think that went to a science teacher, a chemistry teacher or something.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what you look for. It's not just every pattern tie you see. It's like, what is that? I've got one up for sale now. It's got honeybees on it. And so that's when you don't see time. And the brand doesn't matter. It's just, is it unique and fun and different? Because if you have to wear a tie, as you know, it gets boring and you want something fun.
That's right. And with me, I was always very boring because I always wore striped ties. And people like my mother and my sisters and my wife would always say, you need something different. And so they would always try to push off on me something like with a honeybee or something weird like that. But then I'd wear it. But then it's like, but I wear striped ties.
Yeah, you'll figure it out. After you've done it a while, you'll know what unique is. You don't know that when you haven't done anything yet.
Yeah.
So I always look for the holiday ones with, I've got some Santa Claus ties, and, just if you have to wear a tie every day, you might want to do something different.
Yep.
So what else you got on your list?
Oh gosh. There was something else I wrote down, but it's so obscure. I found this thing is called a wall-cure bay wreath porcelain pour-over for coffee. It's made in Germany. It's spelled WALKUREBAYREUTH. It's white porcelain. It's got a base that and a thing that sits on top of it. You put your coffee grounds in it and you do the pour over. I found this thing and I tried it. It just was unwieldy. It didn't make good coffee. And so I went to sell it and I started pricing it. First off, you can't buy them new anymore. They don't making them anymore. At least I couldn't find them new anywhere. And so I put it on eBay and sold it for $141.
Wow.
Ridiculous. I mean, and this woman, she was thrilled to death. She said, "Oh, I've been looking for this. I've been looking for this." And I was like, "Okay, good. I'm glad you found it." And I gave her some instructions, but I thought to myself, "But you're not going to like this coffee if you like pour over coffee, because it's just too tricky to." And what I didn't like about it was, the good thing about a pour over coffee is you use the paper filter, you pick it up, you put it in the trash can. With this thing here, you had to clean out the grounds, and it was just it was a mess. It was just too much work.
Well, maybe she has an emotional attachment to it, like, her mother had one, and or maybe she's not even going to use it. She's going to put it in her kitchen as a memory.
Right.
But what she said is eBay gold. Oh, I've been looking for one of those. They don't make them anymore. So if you think of all the eBay sellers out there and how much stuff they have that's not listed, how much of that is going to be one of those situations where it's somebody that has been looking for that? That's my motivation to list things as soon as I bring them into my home. It's like somebody might have an alert set up. Somebody's looking for this. And that Rolex hat I sold a few months ago was $1. It had Rolex, some kind of race or something that they sponsored.
Like a Formula One race or something?
It was, and it was like not NASCAR, but what's the other, Indy 500 or whatever.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like the
Rolex wouldn't go to NASCAR.
like the real expensive cars that race. What's Formula One? Yes.
That sounds like a Rolex sponsored race.
Yes. So I listed it, and there was a couple online that had sold, and I'm gonna put 125, and it sold within hours. And I never got feedback on it, but it was brand new. It still had the cardboard form inside, and
amazing.
Knew it was unique. I didn't think it would sell that fast, and I didn't think it would sell for full price. I thought people might submit offers. Like that crazy Gone with the Wind sweater I found a few weeks ago. Did you hear about that?
No.
I went to an estate sale, and this woman had all these, I call them teacher sweaters. They're all glittery and themed, and they're beautiful. People say they're ugly, but some of them are quite beautiful. And there's a lot of handwork, but this was a Gone with the Wind with Rhett and Scarlet on the back and Tara on the front. And it was hand knitted, and it was by a company called Barrick that does these sweaters. And so I put 225 on it, listed it. I got 3 offers within a few hours of like $60, $180, and something else. And I'm like, I've got something here. So I raised the price. It's like,
I love that. I love that.
You're going to pay, because this is very unique. And it hasn't sold yet. I feel like it might sell for a Christmas gift, or maybe go to some kind of Southern museum and be displayed on a mannequin or something. It's very unique. So that's the push to the listeners, to get your stuff listed, because you just never know when that's going to happen. And it really is an addiction. It's that dopamine rush we get when something sells. It's like, oh, I love this.
So Mike, you're always talking about you're always talking about the death pile, and I totally get the concept of the death pile. My wife has been giving me a hard time because I've been on these free sites. When something pops up that I think, okay, that looks like something that would sell, I'm grabbing it. Now I don't have time. I'll have time to grab it, but I don't have time to list everything I get full scale, because I'm working.
Right.
So I'm calling my pile my opportunity pile. So as long as I'm continuing to list something, I don't care if my opportunity pile keeps growing, because that means I always have something there. And sooner or later, one of these days, it's going to get listed and it's going to sell. I just couldn't possibly do it all right now. So I'm
Right.
renaming the death pile my opportunity pile because I feel better about myself when I call it that.
Well, yeah, and you're like a squirrel gathering nuts. You don't have time to do anything with you're gathering it. You're just that hunter gatherer thing again. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm not harassing people that have death piles because there's a lot of reasons. If you're doing a house clean out and you get 300 items, you better get them because they're going to go to the landfill and then you can figure it out later. But it's just like what gold is in that pile
I
that
know.
you don't realize yet.
Right. It's like these oscilloscopes I talked about. I think I must have 6 of them. I just don't want to list them all at one time because I don't want anybody to think I've got a surplus of oscilloscopes. But as I sell them one at a time, I mean, each one of those things is going to bring some money to me eventually when I find the right person. The question is, I, I did the first one on an auction. And then that guy wrote me and wanted to do a buy it now. So I did that for him. He was from Canada. Um, and then the next one, I sold another one to some guy in Mexico, and there were some issues with the global shipping, and I'd messed up my international shipping thing. And I just finally said, I want to cancel this sale. So he agreed to cancel the sale, but then he didn't come back to buy it. So now I've got to resell that one. I want to put a pitch in for the other thing that you do. Your 8-point boost your stuff thing.
Yeah, that's in the premium library, right?
Right. So I had kind of felt like I was in a stall about a month ago. And so I researched your thing and I listened to your 8-point. The email that you wrote to me on was me talking to you about that.
Right.
It is effective. I went through and I redid everything, resold a similar, whatever, cleaned up my stuff, continued to list. And then once I got it all done, then I hit 10% promotion. And this week has been nuts selling stuff. And it's got to be that. It's got to
I'm
be.
so glad it worked. And for the listeners, it's called it's an 8-point plan to boost your sales. And
Right.
it's just basically takes apart every single step you can do to get more sales and how everything works together with SEO and doing better than your competitors and all that. And yes, part of it is 10% on promoted. And we probably lost a few people there who had a heart attack when I said 10%, but you don't have to do it forever.
No.
It gets the ball rolling. And most sellers, based on my observation, they only do 1 or 2% on promoted. So when you can just slam your competitors and it gets your listings out in front of people. And okay, you're going to have some fees, but maybe that sale wouldn't have happened if you hadn't done the 10%. You're still going to walk away with money. And it's not forever. So
No,
it's
exactly.
an aggressive step.
But here's the other thing that I liked about it, especially as a new seller like me. I mean, I've gotten my store up to the point now where I think, let me see what I wrote it down. No, 345.
Okay.
All right, which is a good number. I mean, it seems to be a sweet spot for a lot of people. That's a lot. And the more you have, the more you sell. But obviously, you're going to have stuff that won't sell, whatever. But the 8-point boost your sales thing forced me to do a number of things. One, it cleaned up what I did have, but it also crystallized for me what to do the next time I list the next new item. So the next new item I list, I won't have to do what I just got through doing with some of those things because I learned so many little things about like how I took my photos, how I crop my photos, the white background, all the little things, getting rid of the recommendation things, making sure that all those things are done as best if you do that when you do it. I mean, I went through and I had like 300 some items that I had to clean up. It was work. And like you do, I'll be watching a football game on TV and on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever. And I'm just messing with this stuff, doing mindless stuff, fixing my stuff. It took a long time to do that. It's taken me about a month to do it. It won't take me that long in the future because I learned so much about what I had done wrong in the last 7 months that I could do better as I go forward. And that's going to save me time.
Right. And I don't think it's that you did it wrong. You're
Oh, I
new
did.
and you didn't know. And I mean, there's sellers that never touch their listings. They list it one time and they never touch it. But I am a firm believer that leverage the work you've already done. That thing is out there. It's been out there for 6 months. What can you do other than just lowering the price? Because people think, oh, I'm just going to lower the price. But what if the BMW dealership down the street had a 50% off sale? They lowered the price. I'm not going to buy one. I'm not in the market for that. That's not going to appeal to me. But on eBay, you feel like that's the only action you can take. And there are many other actions you can take to get your listings in front of the right people. And a lot of it's keywords. Learning new ones is very important because there's all these new words that come out all the time.
Right. I think keywords is something I really need a lot of work on personally. I'm trying, but I feel like I can do better there.
Yeah. And then eBay keeps adding item specifics. So there's some choices that may not have been there when you listed it. So when you go back and review and revisit, you can fill those out. And that's what comes up, especially on mobile, when people are searching and they're clicking on, what condition, what color, what style, whatever. That's where the item specifics are important because they're filtering, and you might get filtered out if you don't have that item specific they want.
Right.
So,
You said something a few minutes ago. You were talking about the sweater, and you were getting offers, and it made you realize, okay, I've got something here, and you raised your price. I've had a couple of different things. Like I've picked up a couple of free cameras, and I had a couple of people come in and offer me lower prices, and I was like, And one of the things that I've taken to do when I get that kind of an offer from somebody is I'll go look at them and see, are you a seller or are you a buyer? And I have found a number of times that these people are they got a store full of cameras.
mm-hmm.
I'm like, you think my camera, if you want to give me X for my camera and I'm asking why, then that tells me that I may be close to where I belong on my price because you're not going to take my camera for X if you can't sell it for Y.
Right. And
that's
it's
what you do.
Great when you can see they're a seller, but a lot of people have 2 eBay accounts, a buying and a selling. So you can't put that together. But when you list something, especially if you think it's unique, and all of a sudden you start getting a bunch of low offers, that means you've got something. And hold firm or even raise your price, because if you raise your price, they're going to see you're not messing around. You've got something valuable.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing you said about changing things. You can lower price, you can raise price. A lot of it is just doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Because if somebody's going to buy something, they're going to buy something.
Right.
And if they don't like your price and they really want it, they're going to make you an offer.
Mm-hmm.
If they really want it, they're going to offer you something. And so then, and that's another thing that you've said recently, or I've heard recently. It may have been years ago that you said it because I'm listening to the old podcast, but take offers. I'm starting to just take offers now. Unless you just completely ridiculously lowball me, you get in the ballpark, I'm not going to negotiate with you. I'm just going to take your offer.
Yeah, you have to be like the grocery store with the lost leader. The milk is a penny. Sometimes you just have to take a hit to get some momentum on your sales.
Yeah.
So if you've gone 3 days and no sales, and then you get an offer that's really not what you want, but okay, I'm just going to take that just to get the ball rolling. And because eBay sends buyers to listings with successful stores that have sales.
Yeah. It's like that whiskey bottle I sold this morning. I knew the guy offered me $15 for it. It might be worth more to somebody if I want to hold on to it, but I thought, nope, I'll drink more whiskey.
Where that came from, right?
Don't want any of your listeners to think that I'm an alcoholic, but I do enjoy whiskey. But I'm not like that.
Okay, great. Well, we've been going about an hour now. So any final words for the listeners before we wrap it up?
I'm so new at it. I'm not sure that there's so many sellers that you've talked to who have had such great advice for everybody. I just try to I would say to people, just, latch on to people like you who know what you're doing, who've done it, and other people who've just said, if you're going to do it, just jump in there and start doing it. There's no better teacher than mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best lessons I've learned in life were the mistakes I've made. And so just start doing it. And it's never going to be the end of the world, whatever it is that you do.
Right. And there's a lot of people in your situation of hanging in there till retirement. They're planning to do this when they retire at whatever level they want. And so I think your advice is helpful because, I mean, not everybody can just do this full time. You know, people are waiting for their pensions, and their, you know, teachers, especially, they know exactly, I've got 2 years, 4 months and 24 days until, you know, they know exactly. In law enforcement and healthcare, they're hanging in to get their retirement benefits. So they can't do it full time, but they want to. It's just time isn't right.
Exactly. And that's sort of with me. I mean, I know that when I do finally retire, I'm probably going to be one of these people that'll get up in the morning. I'll do whatever it is I do in the morning. I'll go for a bike ride, but then I'll go find myself a good thrift store or look for an estate sale somewhere. And I'm going to go mess around with it and just see what's out there.
Yeah.
And look for those things that are in your BOLO or all the different great stuff. I mean,
Tina, the Hot Wheels lady, calls it boredom buster. I'm just going to go. I just need to go get out and do something. And so I'm just going to go to Goodwill for 30 minutes. And
like that.
Kudos to anybody who can do that. I can't. I got to be in there longer than that, because then you start finding stuff and you're like, oh, this is fantastic. I wonder what else this person donated, you know?
Well, and I've listened to you and I think, okay, I'm trying to think, well, how's this going to happen? You can't just go. I don't think that you can do what you do by just doing a brief visit. It sounds to me like when you go to a Goodwill, you are focused on spending some time there, because what you know is that you just don't know. And if you just try to flash through, you're not going to see something. You might go into the store and spend 2 or 3 hours or however long you spend and not find anything. But if you do it consistently enough, sooner or later, you're going to find something. And if you're doing it if you're doing it with the mindset that, you know, this is sort of how I go about it, and you know that it's paying off in the long run, you can't. It kind of reminds me of something else my dad said. My dad and my mom neither went to college. My dad joined the Navy out of high school, and he was a country boy. But I always said that if he had grown up in a family that focused on college, he would have been an engineer, because he was brilliant at math. He was a great contractor. But he would always say, you can't do anything you do for money. You wouldn't do it for free. But if you're doing it for money, you're going to be unhappy. Mm-hmm. You have to be doing what you do because you enjoy doing it. And if you're doing that and you're making a living, then you're doing what you should be doing. And that, right. And it always, he never led me wrong. You know, you've got some people who really make money doing this.
Oh, yeah.
You've really made money doing this. I don't know that I'll ever really make a ton of money doing this, but I'm making enough money and I'm having fun doing it that it's worth me. It's just sort of it's become a pastime. And I just don't see me stopping, because I kick myself that I didn't start doing it sooner. I'm having so much fun.
Thanks for making time to come on the podcast. I guess you have to get to your real job now.
I'm working from home today, so I'm going to go from my computer to my work computer in just a minute, and I'll see what's waiting for me.
Okay, well, enjoy that pour over coffee, and we'll see your great finds on the Facebook group.
Sounds great. It was fun, Suzanne. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. Bye.
Thanks again, Chuck, for taking time away from your prosecutorial duties to come on this podcast and share all that fun information. Okay, on to today's trivia question. Since we mentioned a marketing strategy, what is a loss leader? And that is spelled Leader. Here's some time to think about it. Okay, So here is your little mini marketing lesson for the day. Loss leader strategy is selling a product or service at a price that is unprofitable but attracts new customers or encourages them to buy additional products and services. This works with reselling for SEO, search engine optimization. If your sales are stagnant, you could take a low offer or send a low offer to get the ball rolling. Obviously, you want to do this judiciously. You wouldn't take a $10 offer on a $100 item, but maybe on an item that cost you $1 and you got a $15 offer and you haven't had a sale in a while. You want to look at the whole situation. Sometimes you just have to make a sale. The eBay algorithm likes busy, active stores. So sometimes you have to make what I call a sacrificial sale to shake things up and get your sales rolling again. Okay, another successful episode in the books. Next week, my guest is another Julie who you may have seen on the Money Making Monday threads in the Facebook group. She has some great information to share, so make sure you tune in for that. Thank you all so much for supporting this podcast, listening to it, and coming back week after week. I hope you have a profitable and productive week on eBay. Bye for now.